The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead as Melissa Hart slid a manila envelope across the conference table. Her smile was thin, practiced, the kind she wore when she was about to ruin someone's day. "Aaron Cole," she said, her voice steady and cold. "We've decided your attitude just isn't a fit for this company anymore." The words hung in the air like smoke. My stomach dropped. I looked around the table at faces I'd worked with for years, people I'd trained, people I'd helped through their worst days. They were all staring at their laptops now, refusing to meet my eyes. 2 years of building this department from nothing. 2 years of 12-hour days, missed dinners with my family, weekends spent fixing problems Melissa created. And this was how it ended. "I don't understand," I said quietly, though I understood perfectly. She leaned back in her chair, still smiling. "We need fresh energy. New perspective. I'm sure you understand." I didn't move. My hands were flat on the table, steady even though my heart was racing. This wasn't about attitude. This was about last week, when I'd questioned her decision to falsify client reports. She hadn't forgiven me for that. "I built this department, Melissa," I said, keeping my voice level. She tilted her head slightly, like she was considering my words, but her eyes were empty. "And we're grateful for your contributions. But it's time to move forward." The air felt thick. I could hear someone shifting in their seat, the quiet rustle of papers being shuffled nervously. "Security will escort you out," she added, her tone casual, like she was discussing lunch plans. The words hit me like a physical blow. Security. Like I was some kind of threat. Like I hadn't poured everything into this place. I stood up slowly, pushing my chair back. My legs felt unsteady, but I forced myself to stay calm. I wouldn't give her the satisfaction of seeing me break. "This is how you treat loyalty?" I asked. She didn't answer. Just kept that fake smile plastered on her face. I looked around the table one more time. Marcus, who I'd trained from day one. Laura, who I'd helped through her mother's illness. Troy, who'd begged me for advice on every major decision he'd made. None of them said a word. I picked up the envelope and walked toward the door. My hand was on the handle when Melissa spoke again. "Leave your badge and laptop with security. They took everything. My badge, my laptop, even the coffee mug my daughter had made me in art class. It had my name painted on it in wobbly letters." I stood in the hallway while a security guard watched me pack my desk into a cardboard box. People walked past, pretending not to notice, but I could feel their eyes on me. Marcus walked by without looking up. Laura turned down a different hallway when she saw me. Troy disappeared into a conference room. Cowards. All of them. The security guard cleared his throat. "Ready, sir?" I nodded, lifting the box. It was lighter than I expected. 7 years of work fitting into one small cardboard box. He walked me to the elevator, then through the lobby. People stopped talking as I passed. I kept my eyes forward, my jaw tight. Outside, the afternoon sun was too bright. I stood on the sidewalk for a moment, blinking against the light, feeling like I'd just been spit out of a machine. My car was in the parking garage. I walked slowly, the box growing heavier with each step. Inside the car, I set the box on the passenger seat and stared at my reflection in the rearview mirror. My face looked pale, tired. "Toxic attitude," I whispered, and laughed. It came out bitter and sharp. My boss fired me for toxic attitude, then offered me $250,000 to come back and fix their mess. That day, sitting in my car in that parking garage, I made myself a promise. I would never let anyone have that kind of power over me again. Never let someone make me feel small for doing the right thing. I drove home in a daze, barely remembering the route. When I pulled into my driveway, I sat for a long time before going inside. My wife Claire was in the kitchen when I walked in. She took one look at my face and knew. "What happened?" she asked, setting down the dish towel. "Melissa fired me." The words felt surreal saying them out loud. Like admitting to something shameful. Claire's expression hardened. "On what grounds?" "Toxic attitude, apparently." She shook her head, anger flashing in her eyes. "That woman is unbelievable." I set the cardboard box on the kitchen counter and stared at it. My entire career reduced to office supplies and a handmade mug. "What are you going to do?" Claire asked quietly. I didn't have an answer. For the first time in my adult life, I had no plan, no direction. Just anger and humiliation sitting heavy in my chest. My name is Aaron Cole, and for 7 years I'd been the operations manager at Crestfield Analytics. I wasn't perfect, but I was loyal. I worked harder than anyone else in that building. I led our biggest accounts, trained every new hire, carried Melissa's team through every crisis she couldn't handle on her own. I'd started at Crestfield right after college, back when it was still a small firm struggling to compete. I watched it grow, helped it grow. Built systems from scratch, established vendor relationships, created training programs that actually worked. Melissa came in 3 years ago as division head. She was smart, ambitious, and knew how to talk to executives. But she didn't know operations. Didn't understand the daily grind of keeping clients happy and systems running. That's where I came in. I made her look good. Every time she pitched a new idea to leadership, I was the one who figured out how to actually implement it. Every time she promised impossible timelines to clients, I was the one who made them happen. She knew it too. That's why it stung so much. She knew exactly what I'd done for her, and she fired me anyway. Because I'd questioned her once. Just once. Within a week, they replaced me with Evan Drew. I found out through a LinkedIn update. Evan was Melissa's latest hire, brought in 6 months ago as a senior analyst. He was loud, confident, always agreeing with whatever Melissa said in meetings. He dressed like he was auditioning for a tech startup commercial. I'd trained him personally. Spent hours walking him through our systems, explaining vendor contracts, teaching him how to handle difficult clients. He couldn't organize a basic meeting without asking me for help. And now he had my job. I stared at his LinkedIn profile photo, that smug smile, and felt my jaw clench. Melissa had posted a congratulations message. Excited to welcome Evan Drew as our new operations manager. Fresh perspective for fresh results. Fresh perspective. That's what I was now. Old news. Stale. Disposable. I closed my laptop and walked away before I did something stupid like leave a comment. The days started blending together. I updated my resume, reached out to contacts, applied to every relevant position I could find. But something had changed. Recruiters who used to respond immediately now went silent. Word had spread. Melissa's toxic label was following me everywhere. Weeks turned into a month. Then 2. No offers. No interviews. Just polite rejections or worse, complete silence. Bills started piling up on the kitchen counter. Claire picked up extra shifts at the hospital, but it wasn't enough. We were burning through savings faster than I wanted to admit. One night, I sat at the kitchen table surrounded by unopened envelopes, a half-empty beer in front of me. The house was quiet. Claire had taken our daughter Emma to her mother's for the weekend, probably to give me space. I picked up my phone and scrolled through job listings, feeling that familiar tightness in my chest. Nothing. Every position either required skills I didn't have or paid half what I'd been making. She really destroyed me, I whispered to the empty room. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Hey Aaron, it's Laura from Crestfield. Sorry to bother you, but something's wrong with the new system. No one can access the vendor dashboard. Do you remember how you set that up? I stared at the message for a long time. Part of me wanted to ignore it, to let them figure it out themselves. But another part felt a strange satisfaction creeping in. My system. My structure. They couldn't run it without me. I didn't respond to Laura that night. Let them sweat a little. But the messages kept coming. First Laura, then Marcus, then someone I barely knew from accounting. Client account data vanished. Melissa's losing it in meetings. Evan can't figure out the backup system. Each message was another crack in the empire I'd built. And I hadn't done anything. I hadn't sabotaged them, hadn't touched their systems. It was simply collapsing under its own arrogance. Evan didn't understand the foundation I'd created. He saw the surface-level stuff, the pretty dashboards and automated reports, but he had no idea how everything connected underneath. Without that knowledge, without understanding how each piece depended on the others, the whole thing was falling apart. I found myself checking my phone more often, waiting for the next update. It was petty, maybe, but it felt good. For the first time since getting fired, I felt something other than shame. I finally responded to Laura with something neutral. Sounds complicated. Good luck. She wrote back immediately. Please, Aaron. We're desperate. I turned off my phone and went to bed, but I couldn't sleep. My mind kept running through their problems, automatically solving them, even though I didn't want to care anymore. A week later, I took a consulting job with a small firm across town. It wasn't glamorous. The office was cramped, the coffee was terrible, and I was making a fraction of my old salary. But it was mine. My boss, an older guy named Frank, treated me with respect. Asked my opinion. Actually listened when I spoke. It was strange at first, almost uncomfortable. I'd gotten so used to fighting to be heard at Crestfield. Every invoice I sent out, every project I completed, I thought about Melissa saying I was replaceable. Funny how unreplaceable I was turning out to be. Claire noticed the change in me. You seem lighter, she said one evening over dinner. I shrugged. Different environment, I guess. Emma looked up from her homework. Are you happy at your new job, Dad? I considered the question. Happy wasn't the right word. I was rebuilding. Learning to trust myself again. But yeah, maybe that was a kind of happiness. Getting there, kiddo. That night, I got another message. This time from Troy. Melissa just lost the Morrison account. Evan miscalculated their inventory projections. They're threatening to sue. I read it twice, then set my phone down carefully. 3 months after my firing, I heard Crestfield had lost its biggest client. The Morrison account had been worth millions annually, and Evan's miscalculation had cost them a fortune. The whispers spread through my professional network like wildfire. People I hadn't talked to in years suddenly wanted to grab coffee, catch up, hear my side of the story. I kept my responses vague. Different management styles, I'd say. Time to move on. But inside, I felt vindicated. Everything I'd warned Melissa about was coming true. She'd valued loyalty and yes men over competence, and now she was paying the price. Frank pulled me aside one afternoon. Heard about your old company. Tough situation. Yeah, I said carefully. He studied me for a moment. You built that department, didn't you? The one that's falling apart? I nodded. Their loss is my gain, he said, clapping me on the shoulder. Keep doing what you're doing. It was a small moment, but it meant something. Someone saw my value. Someone appreciated what I brought to the table. That night, my phone rang. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. Hi Aaron. It's Melissa. I froze. Her voice sounded different. Tired. Almost desperate. I think we got off on the wrong foot, she continued when I didn't respond. Would you be open to discussing a short consulting contract? I didn't answer right away. Let the silence stretch between us. Aaron? Her voice was uncertain now, nothing like the cold confidence from that conference room. I'm listening, I said finally. We've been having some operational challenges. The team is struggling with certain systems. Your systems. I thought maybe you could come in, just temporarily, help us smooth things out. Operational challenges. That's what she was calling it. And why would I do that? I asked, my voice flat. She paused. I could hear her breathing, could picture her in her office, trying to figure out how to ask the man she destroyed for help. Because I'm prepared to make it worth your time. Financially. How much? Another pause, longer this time. $250,000. For 3 months of consulting work. The number hung in the air. That was more than I'd made in 2 years at Crestfield. I'll think about it, I said, and hung up before she could respond. Claire looked up from her book when I walked into the living room. Who was that? Melissa. She wants me back. Her eyebrows shot up. What did you say? That I'd think about it. I thought about it all night. Paced the house, made lists, played out different scenarios in my head. Part of me wanted to tell Melissa where she could shove her offer. Make her suffer the consequences of her decision. Let Crestfield collapse completely. But another part of me, a deeper part, wanted to walk back into that office. Not to help her. To show them. To prove that I'd been right all along, that firing me was the worst decision she'd ever made. And the money. $250,000 would solve a lot of problems. Would buy me time to figure out what I really wanted to do next. You're going to say yes, aren't you? Claire asked over breakfast. I looked up from my coffee. That obvious? She smiled slightly. I know that look. You want to go back and fix everything they broke. Not for her, I said. For me. To prove something. Just be careful. That place hurt you. She was right. But I was different now. Harder. More careful. I wouldn't make the same mistakes. I called Melissa that afternoon. I'll do it. But I have conditions. Name them. First, I report directly to the board, not to you. Second, I have full access to all systems and files. Third, if you try to undercut me or take credit for my work, I walk. No refund. Silence. Then, agreed. We met at a coffee shop the next morning to finalize the details. Melissa looked nothing like the woman who'd fired me. Her suit was wrinkled, her makeup hastily applied. Dark circles shadowed her eyes. She slid a contract across the table. I read through it carefully, checking every clause. Everything we'd discussed was there. $250,000, she said, watching me read. Half up front, half when you've stabilized the department. I looked up. What exactly does stabilized mean? Systems functional, client satisfied, no more. She hesitated, crises. And Evan? Her jaw tightened. Evan will be reassigned. You'll have full authority over operations. I signed the contract, then slid it back to her. Her hand shook slightly as she picked it up. Aaron, she said quietly, I want you to know that firing you was a business decision. Nothing personal. I smiled, but it didn't reach my eyes. Everything's personal, Melissa. You just haven't figured that out yet. She flinched. I stood up. I'll start Monday. Have my office ready. As I walked away, I heard her whisper something, but I didn't turn back. I'd said everything I needed to say. Monday morning, I walked back into Crestfield for the first time in 4 months. The building looked the same, but I felt different. Stronger. More focused. The lobby receptionist did a double take when she saw me. "Mr. Cole? I thought you." "I'm consulting," I said, showing her my temporary badge. She nodded quickly, eyes wide. The elevator ride to the 3rd floor felt longer than usual. When the doors opened, I stepped into the familiar hallway and headed straight for my old office. Evan was there, packing boxes. He looked up when I entered, his face going pale. "Aaron. I didn't know you were coming back." "Yeah, well. Here I am." He shifted uncomfortably. "Melissa said I'm being moved to a different project." "Good luck with that," I said flatly. He grabbed his box and hurried past me. I watched him go, feeling nothing. No anger, no satisfaction. Just cold focus. I sat down at the desk, my desk, and logged into the system. The damage was worse than I'd expected. Files corrupted, vendor contracts expired, client data scattered across multiple platforms with no organization. 4 months. 4 months was all it took to destroy what I'd spent years building. I rolled up my sleeves and got to work. Within days, people started coming to me instead of Melissa. They'd knock on my door, hesitant at first, asking for help with problems Evan couldn't solve. Laura came by with questions about client accounts. Marcus needed help with vendor negotiations. Troy wanted advice on a project proposal. I helped them all. Not because I'd forgiven them for their silence during my firing, but because fixing their problems was the fastest way to fix the department. Melissa hated it. I could tell by the way her jaw tightened every time she walked past my office and saw someone inside. By the way she'd interrupt conversations to assert her authority. "I'm still the division head," she reminded everyone at a team meeting. "All major decisions go through me." I said nothing, just kept working. But everyone knew the truth. I was running things now. She was just trying to hold on to her title. One afternoon, she cornered me in the break room. "You're undermining my authority." I poured my coffee slowly, letting her words hang there. "I'm doing the job you hired me to do. People need to respect the chain of command." I turned to face her. "Maybe if you'd earned their respect, they would." Her face flushed red. "Watch yourself, Aaron." "Or what? You'll fire me again?" She opened her mouth, then closed it. We both knew she had no power here anymore. 2 weeks into my return, I started noticing patterns in the department's failures. Things that didn't make sense, problems that seemed intentional rather than accidental. I stayed late one night, digging through old files, comparing reports from before and after my firing. That's when I found them. Falsified performance metrics. Client reports showing progress that never happened. Revenue projections inflated by nearly 30%. The same thing I'd confronted Melissa about before she fired me. Except this time, it was worse. More widespread. More deliberate. I sat back in my chair, staring at the evidence on my screen. She hadn't just continued the practice. She'd expanded it. Used my absence as cover to manipulate numbers across multiple accounts. My first instinct was to call someone immediately. Blow the whistle. But I stopped myself. No. I needed to be smart about this. Gather everything first. Build an airtight case. I created a secure folder on my personal drive and started copying files. Every falsified report, every manipulated metric, every piece of evidence that showed what Melissa had been doing. If she was going to burn the company down, I wasn't going with her. And I wasn't going to let her blame me for it either. The next morning, I acted like nothing had changed. Went to meetings, answered emails, helped team members with their projects. But I was watching everything now. Every decision Melissa made, every report she reviewed, every conversation she had with leadership. She was trying to cover her tracks. I saw her late one night, alone in her office, frantically updating spreadsheets. The next day, she'd present those same spreadsheets in meetings, pointing to metrics that didn't exist, claiming progress that hadn't been made. Marcus pulled me aside after one particularly painful meeting. The numbers she's showing don't match what I'm seeing in the system. I know, I said quietly. Should we say something? I met his eyes. Not yet. Let her dig herself deeper. He nodded slowly, understanding what I was really saying. This wasn't just about fixing systems anymore. This was about exposure. That afternoon, Melissa called me into her office. The board wants a progress report. I need you to prepare something by Friday. What kind of report? Status of the department. Recovery metrics. Client satisfaction scores. You want real numbers or the ones you've been showing them? She froze. Excuse me? I smiled slightly. I'll prepare an accurate report. That's what consultants do. Friday morning arrived. The board meeting was scheduled for 10 o'clock. I'd prepared 2 versions of the report. The first was what Melissa wanted to see. Clean numbers, positive trends, everything looking good on the surface. The second was the truth. Real performance metrics, actual client feedback, honest assessment of where the department stood. I brought the first version to Melissa's office an hour before the meeting. She flipped through it, nodding with satisfaction. This is good. Professional. Glad you approve. She didn't notice I was still holding my laptop. The boardroom was on the executive floor. 6 directors sat around a long mahogany table. Melissa took her seat at the head, confident, ready to present her version of reality. Thank you all for coming, she began. As you know, we brought Aaron Cole back as a consultant to help stabilize operations. I'm pleased to report significant progress. She pulled up her slides, the ones showing all her manipulated metrics. The directors nodded along, asking occasional questions. Then one of them, an older woman named Catherine, turned to me. Mr. Cole, you've been back for 3 weeks now. What's your assessment of the department's health? Melissa's smile tightened. I think the slides speak for themselves. I'd like to hear from Mr. Cole directly, Catherine said firmly. I opened my laptop. May I? I connected my laptop to the projector. The screen behind Melissa filled with my actual data, the numbers she hadn't wanted anyone to see. This is the real state of the department, I said calmly. Client satisfaction down 40%. Revenue 20% below projections. 3 major accounts threatening to leave. Melissa's face went white. Aaron, what are you? The metrics you've been shown are inaccurate. I continued, looking directly at Catherine. They've been systematically manipulated over the past 6 months to hide operational failures. The room went silent. You could hear the air conditioning humming. One of the directors, a man named Victor, leaned forward. That's a serious accusation. I have documentation. I pulled up side-by-side comparisons. Melissa's reports on the left, actual system data on the right. The discrepancies were impossible to ignore. Melissa stood abruptly. This is ridiculous. Aaron is clearly trying to sabotage me because I fired him. Is that why you fired him? Catherine asked, her voice sharp. Because he questioned your reporting practices? Melissa's mouth opened and closed. No words came out. I think we need to adjourn this meeting, Victor said, looking at Melissa with cold eyes. Catherine, can you arrange an internal audit? Immediately, Catherine replied. Melissa grabbed her papers, hands shaking. As she rushed toward the door, she shot me a look of pure hatred. I didn't react. Just closed my laptop and gathered my things. By Monday afternoon, Melissa had been placed on administrative leave pending investigation. The news spread through the office like wildfire. People stopped by my office to ask what happened. I kept my answers brief. The board is looking into some reporting inconsistencies. That's all I know. But everyone knew there was more to it. They'd seen Melissa's face when she left that board meeting. They'd heard the whispers from executives on the upper floor. Troy knocked on my door around 3. Is it true? About the falsified reports? I nodded. He sat down heavily. I helped prepare some of those. She told me the numbers came from you. She lied. Jesus. He rubbed his face. We all knew something was wrong. But nobody wanted to say anything. After what happened to you. I get it, I said, and meant it. Fear makes people compliant. Melissa had used that perfectly. That evening, Catherine called me. The preliminary audit confirms your findings. Extensive data manipulation across multiple quarters. We're expanding the investigation. What happens now? For Melissa? Nothing good. For you? She paused. The board would like to discuss your future with the company. Permanently. I thanked her and hung up, then sat in the quiet office, processing what she'd said. They wanted me back. Not as a consultant. As something more. The question was, did I want that? The following week, I met with the full board. They offered me Melissa's position, head of operations, with full authority and a substantial salary increase. I listened to their pitch, nodded at the right moments, asked clarifying questions. They clearly wanted me. Needed me. When they finished, I leaned back in my chair. I appreciate the offer. I really do. But I'm going to decline. Shock registered on several faces. Catherine spoke first. May I ask why? Because I don't want to spend my career fixing other people's messes, I said honestly. I've already done that. It's time to build something of my own. Victor frowned. We can increase the compensation. It's not about money. I stood up. You're all good people, and I wish you the best. But I've learned something important over the past few months. Loyalty to a company that doesn't value integrity is worthless. I'd rather work for myself. Catherine smiled slightly, like she understood. If you change your mind, the door is open. I appreciate that. I shook hands with each of them, then walked out of the boardroom for the last time. Back in my temporary office, I started packing up. My contract was officially complete. The department was stabilized, the truth was exposed, and I was done. Laura stopped by as I was boxing up my things. You're really leaving? Yeah. What will you do? I smiled. Something better. Melissa's resignation was officially announced 2 days later. The company released a carefully worded statement about pursuing other opportunities and strategic differences. Everyone knew what it really meant. She'd been forced out. The headline spread across LinkedIn and industry forums within hours. Former Crestfield executive under investigation for data misrepresentation. My phone blew up with messages from former colleagues, old contacts, even recruiters who'd ghosted me months ago. I ignored most of them. There was only one conversation I wanted to have. I called Frank, my boss at the small consulting firm. I have a proposition for you. We met for lunch. I laid out my plan, start my own consultancy focused on operations management and organizational integrity. Help companies build systems that actually worked, led by people who valued honesty over appearances. I'd like to do it with your blessing, I said. Maybe even as a partnership. Frank listened carefully, then smiled. I've been waiting for this conversation since the day I hired you. You're not built to work for other people, Aaron. You never were. Is that a yes? That's a hell yes. We shook hands across the table, and I felt something shift inside me. This was right. This was what I'd been moving toward all along. 6 months later, my consultancy was thriving. I'd brought on 3 employees, all people I trusted. We had more clients than we could handle, most of them coming through referrals. Half of Crestfield's former clients had reached out to me directly. They'd lost faith in the company after Melissa's scandal and wanted someone they could trust. I worked with each one carefully, rebuilt relationships, delivered results. No manipulation, no shortcuts. Just solid work and honest communication. One afternoon, I got an email from Troy. Thought you'd want to know, Evan quit last week. Couldn't handle the pressure after you left. The new operations head is struggling too. Different reasons than Melissa, but still struggling. Makes me realize how much you carried all those years. I read it twice, feeling a sense of quiet satisfaction. Not because they were struggling, but because someone finally acknowledged what I'd done. Claire noticed the change in me. You're different now, she said one evening. Calmer. More confident. I'm building something that actually matters, I replied. On my own terms. Emma looked up from her homework. Does that mean you're happy, Dad? I thought about the question. About everything that had happened, the firing, the betrayal, the long months of uncertainty. About how all of it had led me here. Yeah, kiddo. I really am. A year after my firing, I found myself walking past Crestfield's building on my way to meet a new client. The company had downsized since Melissa's departure, consolidated offices, struggled to rebuild their reputation. I felt nothing looking at it. No anger, no bitterness, not even satisfaction. Just distance. My phone buzzed with a calendar reminder. Lunch with Catherine, the board member who'd supported me during the investigation. We met at a restaurant downtown. She looked tired but pleased to see me. Your consultancy is making waves, she said after we'd ordered. I hear nothing but good things. Thank you. How's Crestfield? She sighed. Recovering. Slowly. The new leadership is solid, but rebuilding trust takes time. We lost a lot when Melissa was there. Even more when you left. Sometimes things need to fall apart before they can be rebuilt properly. Wise words. She smiled. Any regrets about turning down our offer? I shook my head. Not one. Good. That's how I knew you'd made the right decision. After lunch, I walked back to my office, in a building I leased, with my name on the door. The sign read, Coal Operations Consulting, Integrity in Action. It wasn't flashy, but it was mine. Melissa reached out once, about 8 months after her resignation. A brief email, no subject line. Aaron, I've had time to reflect on everything that happened. I was wrong to fire you. Wrong to manipulate those reports. Wrong to put my ambition ahead of doing what was right. I don't expect forgiveness, but I wanted you to know that I've learned from my mistakes. I hope you have too. Melissa. I read it several times, trying to decide how to respond. Part of me wanted to ignore it completely. Part of me wanted to write back with all the anger I'd held inside. In the end, I wrote something simple. I learned that integrity isn't negotiable, and loyalty to yourself matters more than loyalty to any company. I hope you've learned the same. Good luck. Aaron. I hit send and closed my laptop. That evening, I took Emma to her soccer game. Watched her run across the field with that fierce determination she'd inherited from me. Claire sat beside me in the bleachers, her hand in mine. You seem at peace, she said quietly. I nodded. I am. Melissa had taught me something she never understood herself. When you build something with integrity, it doesn't matter who tries to tear it down. You'll always rise again. Not because you're seeking revenge or trying to prove anything to anyone else. But because you know your own worth, and that's the only validation that matters. The game ended. Emma scored 2 goals. We celebrated with ice cream. And I realized something important: this was what success actually looked like. Not corner offices or impressive titles. Just peace, purpose, and the freedom to build something real. Melissa had fired me for having a toxic attitude. But what she'd really been afraid of was someone who wouldn't compromise their values for convenience. In the end, that's exactly what saved me.